Hi everyone, this is Andy from the EduTechie interview series, which was part of the OETC conference. I have a really special guest with me today, and it was the opening keynote of the conference, and that's Danielle Feinberg from Pixar Animation Studios. Yes, that Pixar. Danielle's work can be seen in such memorable films like A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., the Academy Award winner Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, and Ratatouille. She was the director of photography for lighting for the Academy Award-winning features WALL-E and Brave. Danielle is a native of Boulder, Colorado. She discovered her love of combining computers and art when she was 8 years old, and this talent brought her to Harvard University and now Pixar Animation Studios for the past 18 years. So first and foremost, Danielle, thank you so much for taking your time out of your schedule to talk to a lowly geek like me. So Danielle, as an educator, I'm fascinated by how people pursue their talents and become successful. Can you tell me maybe some of the inspirations or key moments that maybe led you to your career going from Boulder to Harvard to Pixar?
Sure. I think one of the big things that happened for me was in fourth grade. I went to this sort of odd, unusual private school. It wasn't sort of relegated to the normal public school things. And so there was a dad that offered to teach a programming class in something called Logo. And this is back at a time when the first personal computers were coming out, the first Apples, before they even had anything they'd call a Macintosh. And I didn't even know what it was, but decided it'd be fun to do something. And so I took the class with this dad, and he was teaching the class called Logo, which is really about sorry. So we can get one. So it was a Logo, you're writing code, and it's driving a little icon of a turtle that draws a picture. And so one of the first experiences I had with a computer and programming was making pictures, which obviously, if you flash to later in my life, ends up being sort of a critical thing, because it's what I end up really loving, is this combination of art and tech. So that was one of the big sort of milestones, I think, that happened that sort of impacted the path of my life, so to speak. There's a couple others. I had 3 of my first 4 computer science teachers were women, which I think probably helped enormously. I had an amazing math teacher at the elementary school that I went to, who was one of the guys that ran the school, and he would handwrite out a math assignment for each kid each day, tailored to how fast you were going in math. So I got this great math education and fell in love with math. And then we had amazing science teacher where you could do your own projects. And so all of these things educationally that really inspired me and got me hooked into math and science from a very early age, so that any challenges I faced later on, really had already fallen in love with math, science, and coding, so that when people told me girls don't do that, or that's stupid, or you're weird because you're doing it, I didn't really care, because I already loved it. And so I didn't love that was how they felt, but I wasn't going to be deterred from doing it. So I think those were all pretty critical pieces of me ending up staying on the path that I've gotten on.
Can you tell me, I heard about a lawnmower story, about picking apart a lawnmower. Can you tell it?
Sure. When I was going into 8th grade, looking at the list of classes that you could take, and one of them was a shop class called Power Mechanics. And the idea was that the local hardware store would donate lawnmowers that weren't working anymore that people had turned into the hardware store. And you would go in every day, and you'd put on your jumpsuit and zip it up, and you would go through step by step pulling the engine on the lawnmower apart and putting it back together, with the idea that at the end of the semester, if you had done everything sort of carefully and been good about it, then maybe your lawnmower would start at the end. And this was fascinating to me, just because finding out how things worked, and also this idea that you took all these pieces and you put them back together in the right way, you would make something functional that had not been functional. Plus, I just love to get my hands dirty and sort of play with mechanical things. So, but I also suspected that there probably weren't going to be many girls in the class, and I suspected that it was going to be a scenario where if people knew I was taking the class, they were going to think it was pretty weird. So, and that's a particularly difficult time, I think, in terms of voluntarily doing something that you think people will think you're weird for. And so it's a difficult time of trying to figure out who you are and fitting in, most importantly. And so it was a great lesson for me, I think, because I decided to go for the thing that I was really interested in. I took the class. And what happened was I went to class and I was the only girl. And I went every day and took the lawnmower apart piece by piece and then put it back together. And at the end of the day, at the end of the semester, we all rolled our lawnmowers out into the parking lot by the football field, and the teacher walked down the line putting gas into each lawnmower. And I just happened to be at the end of the line. So I'm watching all these other guys in my class struggling with their lawnmowers, just pulling the cord over and over and over again, which I think happens all the time with lawnmowers, right? Like, they don't start up that well a lot of times. And just sort of feeling like I had, not only had we put a whole semester's worth of work in, but I had put my own sort of ability to fit in at jeopardy because of this class, deciding to go against the cool kids and take this class. And so the teacher puts gas in the lawnmower, and I take a deep breath and give a giant pull on the cord, and my lawnmower roared to life. And so I gave a big old holler as all these guys were staring at me with their cords in their hands like, what? And I ran around the football field mowing the lawn in the celebratory lap. So that, one thing that I learned from that was just that it was really important to find the things that I loved and to follow them so that you find your passion in life, and then you can kind of persevere through everything else that's going on. And also that I did really love these things, and it was worth persevering, and that maybe I actually was really good at it because I had done the best in the class, and it was just this very reaffirming sort of experience.
Great. You were the keynote speaker at OETC, and I had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of the participants and people that came from your session, and kind of the two, I guess, pieces that I got from a lot of the interviews were, you talked about coding being an important skill and something that can be a big part of education, especially in today's, I guess, climate, and also that girls should pursue it. Was that were the takeaways that you wanted from your keynote, or was there more, or want to elaborate?
I think part of what I was trying to get across, on top of just that everyone should be involved in code. It isn't just that I want more girls to be involved in code. It's more ethnic diversity too. But just that code is sort of everywhere now, and instead of if you choose code, you're limiting your options down, where I think a lot of times when kids are, say, a senior in high school, or they've gotten to college and they're trying to pick their major, I remember for me that felt very much like shutting the world down. It's like, oh, my world is my oyster and I can do whatever I want, but now someone's asking me to spend 4 years and $1 gazillion on the one thing that I choose. And instead, when you choose to do code, you're actually opening up the whole world, because the code is everywhere now. There is not a thing you can find that doesn't have code involved. So you're actually really opening up possibilities in this really exciting way. And I think that that's part of what I was trying to convey, but also what I was trying to convey is that because it can be challenging to keep people interested in math and science and code, especially the groups that are in a minority in those classes, which tend to be women and tend to be sort of more minorities, that some of the things that for me were really important in terms of keeping me involved in it, and some of it is these things I've described, where early on in my youth, I find these things that I love and I have a little bit of success with and have someone there sort of supporting me, and I fall in love with it before people are telling me that it's not what I'm supposed to be doing. So then by the time they're telling me that, I don't believe them, because I already love it and I know it's something I should be doing. And then also talking about the mentors I had, and how mentors can really, not only does their sort of belief in you and support in you help you get over the difficulties that you're going to face, but they can also help unlock certain things for you where you start to find the things you're passionate about. I had a computer science teacher that let us choose our own projects, and because of that I have these experiences where I suddenly realize all of these amazing things about code that I like, and I maybe wouldn't have gotten there without that mentor sort of helping me unlock these keys and giving me these pushes in this direction. And then also just finding the passion, which helps you really overcome all kinds of things and be able to work hard in a way where hard work starts to feel just like joy and satisfying time instead of hard work, which is what you need really to get ahead. And it isn't necessarily about being a genius or something. It's really about whether you love something so you do it all the time, which is actually hard work, right? And so I was sort of trying to convey those points just to give a peek into what, for me, got me over the hump and kept me on that path. Because I do think it's really important we have diverse input from people in technology, because it's so prevalent in our world. And we can't just have one group of people driving the innovation, because otherwise you're not really innovating truly, and you're not creating things that are accessible to the whole world. You're creating things that are, appealing to one section of the world, and the rest of them are just having to adopt it because there's nothing that represents them.
Thanks. I read the book Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, and can you, I approach it from kind of an educational standpoint, and the book, I looked at just how the leadership structure and the organizational pieces from Pixar really pull out, I think, just talent and art, and I mean, you guys do such amazing work. I guess first of all, do you think that it's the culture that's created at Pixar that pulls out the talents and cultures and creativity? And if so, is there a way that education could somehow learn from that model and start thinking in maybe different ways for education? What do you think?
I think one of the things at Pixar is that it's a very collaborative place, and I think that's one of the keys to our movies being so great, is that we have this whole structure that's all about, really the key to any movie is telling a great story. And you can say all kinds of other things, but it does not matter. If you don't have a great story, you're not going to have a great movie. You can have a pretty movie, you could have a sort of an interesting movie. And so if it's all about story, and we have this whole company that's geared towards really developing a story, we spend 4, 5, 6 years on a story. We don't just write a script and make the film. We work it over, and we have a story department, we have a director, we have our brain trust. You present this, you do a screening of the movie, and you get notes from all the people in the brain trust. Now that's other directors, that's heads of story. It's all these people who are really, really good at story. And so you're taking in all this input, and it's this very, very collaborative thing. And because Pixar, it's this core group of people that sort of, they grew up together, and they were all on the same footing, and what they cared about was making great films and telling great stories. And so when they're giving feedback, it isn't about some, I don't know, like executive telling you need to do something, or the marketing person saying, like, boys 9 to 13 like to buy toys about this topic, so make a movie about that. It's about a group of people coming together who love something and giving input and helping each other push back and forth on things and find what's the great thing in there. And you can give a note, and the person whose movie it is will consider it, but they don't have to do it. And so they're taking in all of this feedback and creating something out of that. So it's this very collaborative, amazing thing. And I think that's definitely one of the giant keys to success around here. And we have really great people who are very smart and very talented, but also really nice. And so it's very easy to work collaboratively because people are very respectful and really talented. And so, yeah, I absolutely think, I mean, I would never that, oh yes, of course that could work in education, but I think everywhere in the world we could use something like that, where you have a group of people that are giving input in a way that's positive and digestible, and where you can kind of take it or leave it, but you understand how what you're trying to do comes across to other people. And ultimately you're going to make a better thing. If a single person makes a movie, that's one thing. When we have 200 people making a movie and they're all giving their input, it's hard to imagine how you couldn't have a stronger movie because of that, because you're all working together and sort of brainstorming on something to make it better. I think in education it would be amazing
to work that in somehow. And part of that would be you'd have to get in a room where it wasn't about budgets and tests and all these things that I think, like hang over teachers and administrators and sort of box them in from being able to do some really amazing stuff. And I mean, I hope that a lot of the technology stuff that's starting to come onto line maybe helps relieve some of that pressure and frees up the teachers to be more creative and be able to just do the teaching they want to do.
Yeah, that was really powerful, and your point brings up an interesting piece that I was thinking about. I was working with music teachers, and we were working about iPads and creativity, and the teachers we got around to using GarageBand, and they were having a jam session. And I think music teachers, I know when there's tight budgets, the music department is sometimes the first consideration. Can we cut down some of the music pieces? But yet they're the one place when if you look at something like a musical, look at all the different talents that get exposed, and just putting on a musical. I mean, what a great project! And you're doing reading, writing, and you're adding music and art and dance, and it puts it all together. So I guess your point made me think, we need to really think deeper about about projects like that, and maybe just project-based learning, I think.
Absolutely. You get the kid who's building sets for the musical who's not interested in anything else that's going on in school, and they suddenly are building the sets and think, wow, this is amazing, and that can get, you get inspired, and then they get more engaged in school, and you take those opportunities away, and I think it's really disappointing. You're not doing the kids any kind of service then.
Well, it also taps in, again, thinking of the musical analogy, is something for lighting. Now, again, is there a course for lighting in high school? Probably not, but it just really neat that your field is focused on lighting and how important that is to a film, and you don't, probably the average moviegoer probably doesn't realize it, but
no, yeah.
Can you talk about just briefly the importance of lighting in film?
Sure. Coming to Pixar, I didn't really know anything about lighting, so I learned everything I know about lighting here at Pixar, so all I know is virtual lighting, and it's been really, I think, the best way to learn about lighting, because it's really all about storytelling. And it's this critical piece where lighting happens at the very end. And so we write the story, and we're working on the story. And at the same time, we start building the sets, and we build the characters, and then we put the cameras into that set, and we put the characters in, and then the characters start doing some acting. And then you get the clothing to move right and the hair to move right, and then you put the special effects in, and then the last thing we're doing is putting the lighting in. And for me, I think the reason that I fell in love with lighting is that there's all these neat things happening when it comes into lighting department. But at that point, what we do is, if we didn't put any lights in, it actually comes out black, because the computer is doing sort of these physical calculations. And if you don't put any lights in, it really says, okay, it's black. So what we do is these white working lights, they're called. And you can't tell if it's sunlight or fluorescent light or anything. It's just everything looks kind of gray and drab. But you can see what you're doing, and it's cheap computationally. So when it comes into lighting and we start putting the lighting in, and we're very concerned with what's the point of the story here, so what's the emotion, what's the time of day, what's the weather, how do we make the characters look the best, how do we make the set look beautiful, how do we guide the viewer's eye to look at the right thing. So there's all these things we're considering, and we put the lighting in, and there's this moment where the lighting all comes together, and suddenly for me, it becomes this believable world that you could go inside your computer screen. You sort of believe that this thing exists and these characters exist. And that, to me, is where the whole sort of magic happens in movie making, is right at that end step where it all suddenly becomes this real virtual world, if you will. So I think that, for me, lighting is one of the most important things, but it's every department is helping tell these stories, and lighting is just one of them. And it's when they all come together like that we get to create these worlds that the audience gets to enjoy and spend an hour and a half immersing themselves in and having some fun.
I'm just, again, throwing this out here from a layman. Was Finding Nemo one of the most challenging because of an ocean environment?
Yeah, if you're in the computer and something takes place in air, you don't really have to do a whole lot, whereas when it's underwater, we had to do a lot of research and development early on to figure out what we needed to do to make it look like water, and most of that fell on the lighting department. So instead of just lighting a normal film in every single shot, we're having to add 5 or 6 elements in there and get them balanced right so that you believed that it was underwater. So things like caustic patterns on the floor of the ocean, which is those ribbons of light you see at the bottom of a pool or something, and the particulate that's going in the water that's sort of doing surge and swell, we called it, or the grass that moves. So you feel as though there's water there, and fog beams coming down from the water surface, and different things like that give you this impression of being underwater, the coloring that the water does as it gets farther away from the camera. So all of those things sort of coming together. So it was the normal amount of lighting plus this other thing where you had to carefully orchestrate it so it was believable underwater.
Wow, it's fascinating. Tell us about your latest project and endeavors. I know you've been part of Made with Code, and
Yeah.
Can you give us a chat about any movies you're working on?
Sure. I'm working on a film we have coming out in 2017, and it's all super secret, which keeps it exciting. And so I finished Brave, and I've been doing some tech work here and some lighting work here and gearing up for the next movie and figuring out what the look is and what the technology is that we'll need, and so lots of fun stuff. And then what I've also been doing is been involved with some Made with Code stuff, Google's initiative to get more girls into coding, and so been giving talks to a lot of audiences that are girls and talking about what's exciting about code or what my own personal experiences were. But a lot of it is describing how we make our movies with math and science and code, which is, I think, really fun because I think a lot of kids have no idea that use any math or science or code to make Pixar films. So it's a pretty easy way of showing them a fun application of those things. I've also been doing a lot of work with organizations like Girls Who Code, doing the same kind of thing. So it's been fun getting out there and using our movies to also encourage lots of groups to get into more math and science and code.
Cool. Okay. I came across an interview with you, or maybe it was a presentation, and you made the comment I thought was really kind of profound, and you said, "I had mistaken confidence for knowledge." I thought that was a really powerful quote, and it made me think of some implications. But can you maybe tell me your thoughts on that and where that came from and how that's important for you and for people, I think, in general?
Sure. What happened was I had gotten promoted, and so I ended up in a lot of meetings here at Pixar where I was in a new job, and I think what happens sometimes, the sort of imposter syndrome, where you're sitting in these meetings in this new job, and you think, well, do they know that I'm not actually qualified for this, or I don't know what I'm doing? And it's like, who knows how to do a job before they've actually done a job? Like, no one, right? It's silly to think that. But and so I'm in these meetings with all of these important people making important decisions about the movies. And, these movies are, it's not a $10 movie. It's like $100 million movie. There's a lot of pressure. And so there's these things where people would talk about things like they knew them for sure. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if someone had asked me that, would I have known that? Do I know that? Would I have been able to comment on that? Because I was staying fairly quiet in these meetings because I had just gotten into these meetings. And as time went by, it was sort of eating at my confidence of like, oh, everybody's smarter than me. And finally one day I was in a meeting, and this guy was going on and on about something, this guy who was my boss. And it was something that I actually probably knew more about than he did. But he was saying these things as if they were fact. And I thought, oh, he actually has no idea what he's talking about. Like, he just thinks that, and so he's saying it because he has ultimate faith that whatever he thinks his deductive reasoning is, or whatever he thinks is actually completely accurate. Whereas I think my tendency is, unless I'm 100% sure, I'm not going to say it. So that was this very revealing moment of the fact that I was sitting there taking this guy who's my boss and other people in these meetings, they had utter confidence in themselves and what they thought, and I took that to mean that they actually knew it. And it was this great moment where I realized that was not necessarily true, and that I did not need to be silent anymore, because it wasn't that everyone in the room knew more than I did. They just had the confidence to join the conversation and to say what they thought. Now, I was going to say it a different way that wasn't presenting it as fact, but that I needed to stop sort of sitting on the sidelines and thinking that I didn't know what I was doing, because obviously someone had enough confidence in what I had done prior that they had put me in that position, and what that meant was what I had to say was actually valuable. And I was sort of cheating myself and cheating the movie by not speaking up, because really ultimately what I cared about was making the best movie possible. And so that was a very pivotal moment for me, where it was sort of like, I don't know, in The Wizard of Oz, where they pull back the curtain and something is sort of suddenly revealed to you. So,
do you think, listening to maybe some of your stories, and I feel like I can relate to them, do you feel like you were an introvert growing up?
I think technically I'm probably an extrovert, but I'm a very shy extrovert. So, yeah, I have always been very shy, and speaking up in sort of group situations or classes and stuff was very challenging, especially being at Harvard around so many smart kids. And I just remember, there's a lot of those places, a lot of the classes, your grade depends on your participation. And I would just have a heart attack every time I had to say something, because, there's people who really enjoy talking about things in a class like that, and they want to flex all of their knowledge, especially at a place like Harvard, and there's a lot of smart people. And I thought, oh, I don't have anything to add to this, but I have to say something, or I'm not going to get a good grade in this class. And so I think all of these things led up to this moment that I'm describing with this guy, where I thought, oh, I've sort of been doing this wrong the whole time. But yeah, I'm much better now, but I was very shy.
Well, I read the book Quiet. I don't know if you've heard it. It's about introverts.
I've heard part of it, yeah.
How they, introverts end up being pretty good leaders because they've sat back and they've kind of watched how things work. And that your chat kind of brought me to that thought. Here's our whimsical question of the day, and that is, which Pixar animated character are you most like, or wish you were like, or you relate to most?
I think that I have two characters I'm going to give you. So the first one is Wall-E, because I have such great admiration for, first of all, Wall-E's ability to see beauty in these really unusual things, which I just dearly love. And also, Wall-E has such a big heart, and that really resonates with me. I just think that Wall-E is I hope that I have a good portion of Wall-E in me. And the other one is Merida from Brave, because she's such a spirited teenager that's just going after what she wants, and sometimes she might be misguided or something, but she's really she believes in things, and she really has passion. And I believe in life that passion is really what it takes to make things happen and to have a happy life. And so I hope that I have equal parts Wall-E and Merida.
Nice. Okay, these are the Speed Geek questions, so you get 3 questions. They're just short, quick responses. So
okay.
I'm going to read them off using my Decide Now app on my iPhone here. Let me
Excellent.
Get this out. Here we go. And we're going to spin the wheel. And it lands on, okay, your favorite search engine, Google, Bing, or Yahoo?
Google.
All right, fair enough. We won't make you elaborate, but we could. Okay, this one's a similar, Mac or PC?
Mac, definitely. I've grown up with Macs since the very beginning. I'm an Apple lover.
Do you use, Macs in your line of work? Is that?
We use a lot of the artists use the technical artists, which is what I am, and the animators. We use Linux machines. We have to have things like the fastest graphics cards and all kinds of things, and Linux provides this really nice base for our software. And so we're based on Linux machines, but I have 2 Linux machines and a Mac on my desktop, and I have a Mac laptop, and I have a Mac desktop at home, and a couple iPads. So at work, we really, and the more sort of administrative side of things all uses Macs here. So we have both Linux and Mac, I would say.
Okay, and the last one is, and we may need to adapt this for you, is your favorite educational blog, or do you have a blog you follow? It doesn't have to be educational.
My favorite educational blog or other blog. I don't tend to follow blogs as much. I am doing more sort of cruising things on Twitter or Instagram or different, like, more little bits that fit in more easily between running to this meeting or standing in line here or something that sort of lead me on to other things later. So I don't tend to follow as many blogs. I'm a lot of times linking more to articles from Twitter or something. So.
Okay, well, that answered the social networking question.
Yes, right. Instagram is mine of choice, but yeah.
Great.
Pictures.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for your time. You do
Absolutely.
such great work. You know, you mentioned Wally having a big heart, but I think you know, Pixar has a big heart, and I think it must be a great place to work because what you produce is such great movies. So keep up the good work, and thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.